course of the conflict between the outgoing U.S. President Donald Trump and his administration and Iran is no longer counted in days, but rather in hours, in light of the uncertainty that has dominated the atmosphere of the power transfer to President-elect Joe Biden, scheduled for January 20, that is, only 35 days from now. The assassination of the Iranian nuclear scientist, Mohsen Fakhrizadeh, Friday, November 27, could have been considered an attempt to hunt Iran to launch a sweeping US-Israeli attack against it to destroy its nuclear facilities, a dream that has always dominated the imagination of the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, and by extension this is being imposed. The dream itself as a priority for U.S. President Donald Trump, striking Iran, and destroying its nuclear facilities could have employed the victory that President Trump hopes to run in the new elections on the one hand and cause confusion in the agenda of President-elect Joe Biden in the future relationship with Iran, especially preventing him from achieving an American return to the nuclear agreement. The Iran, and it could have also been employed to save Benjamin Netanyahu from his intractable governmental crisis and from the painful fate awaiting him if his criminal trial had begun. The American-Israeli expectation, after the assassination of the nuclear scientist against Iran, was that Iran would hasten its revenge, lose the compass of accounts, and fall into the set trap that pushes it to undertake a retaliatory response that could be taken as a pretext to launch the hoped-for attack against it, or to incite the American domestic public opinion against any new U.S. rapprochement with Iran. The discipline demonstrated by Iran and not being drawn into provocation, and its seizure of coals with both hands did not seem to suit neither the American administration nor its regional allies, especially the Israeli occupation entity, and from here came the highly provocative military parade by the Americans last Thursday, December 10, 2020, when it was announced that two strategic American B-52 planes had taken off from their base in Louisiana on Wednesday, December 9, 2020, and they crossed the Atlantic Ocean and Europe and from there to the Arabian Peninsula and the Gulf, where Saudi Air Force fighters accompanied them, and they paraded near Qatar and the Iranian coast, but while maintaining a safe distance from the coast of Iran. Observers analyses considered that the flight of these two aircraft, accompanied by Saudi planes this time, aimed at two goals, the first of which is to intensify provocation to Iran, which are divided in the head of power between the patience shown by the government and the President of the Republic, Hassan Rouhani, and the exacerbation of the mobilization among the hardliners in the Revolutionary Guard and Parliament, with the aim of forcing Iran on the acceleration of the implementation of revenge for the world that was assassinated, given that this revenge will create the American and Israeli justifications to launch the desired attack against Iran. The second goal is to deter Iran from any response against the United States or Israel in these extremely critical American and Israeli circumstances. And, in particular, the circumstances of the American confusion associated with the battle for the transfer of power. General Frank McKenzie, commander of the U.S. Central Command, who is, by the way, the supreme commander of the American forces in the Middle East, stated that the mission that was carried out, flying two B-52s near the Iranian coast, was designed to confirm the commitment of the U.S. military towards its regional partners, and to verify the ability of the United States to rapidly deploy combat forces anywhere in the world. In addition to deterring Iran or any of its regional allies, especially in Iraq, from any possible aggression against U.S. interests. It was only 24 hours after this dangerous U.S. provocation against Iran that the shock came that would inevitably reverse the priorities of the outgoing U.S. President Donald Trump. Last Friday, December 11, 2020, the Federal Supreme Court issued a ruling that stunned President Trump and his supporters within the Republican Party. The court rejected the major case that was filed by Texas, a historically pro-Republican state, with the support of a large segment of the Republican Party to nullify millions of votes in the four swing states of America, Wisconsin, Michigan, Georgia, and Pennsylvania, with the aim of depriving Biden of the majority he had obtained. By the votes of these states and then the announcement of Trump's victory as an alternate victor. The Supreme Court ruling was based on the premise that Texas lacks the legal right to litigate as to how other states conduct their elections. Trump's shock was enormous, and he expressed his disappointment after the verdict was passed, and resorted to Twitter to pour out his anger and discontent. He wrote, "The Supreme Court is failing us, there is no wisdom or courage." And he said in another tweet, "The fight has just started. Forged elections, we will continue the battle." Then the demonstrations in support of him erupted by the thousands last Saturday near the White House and clashed with other demonstrations who refused to keep him in power, and the series of victims began with an indication that this is the beginning of turmoil and perhaps chaos that many expected that it would be an inevitable result of the violent conflict and division that threatens the entire American society, not just the political system, and may lead to the disintegration of the United States. This sinister prospect came from Ellen West, the head of the Republican Party in Texas, which is aligned with Trump, saying that the Supreme Court's decision may lead to the disintegration of the United States. "This decision will have far-fetched repercussions," he added. "Perhaps the states that respect the law, meaning states supporting Trump, should bond together and form a federation of states that respect the Constitution." Developments confirming that the struggle against Iran has begun to turn into an internal U.S. conflict between the U.S. states. A conflict that no one knows its extent or where it will end, but it reveals an important truth, which is that what has been reported about the American decline as a mere hypothesis during the past few decades has begun to turn into reality, and when that happens, the repercussions and indeed the facts will be loud in the Middle East. The course of the conflict between the outgoing U.S. President Donald Trump and his administration and Iran is no longer counted in days, but rather in hours, in light of the uncertainty that has dominated the atmosphere of the power transfer to President-elect Joe Biden, scheduled for January 20, that is, only 35 days from now. The assassination of the Iranian nuclear scientist, Mohsen Fakhrizadeh, Friday, November 27, could have been considered an attempt to hunt Iran to launch a sweeping US-Israeli attack against it to destroy its nuclear facilities, a dream that has always dominated the imagination of